So we're finally back with what happens after the Konosuba anime. And in this video, we're going to go over Light Novel 9. Yes, it has been a minute, but we're going to go over this one. This one's a pretty good one, especially if you're a Megumin fan, then you'll really enjoy this one because the main focus of this volume is her. We learned about her backstory on like why she really likes explosion magic, and also this will connect to the spinoff that's coming out in the spring. We also get some funny moments with Aqua, especially with her like building stuff because she's gonna build a wall. Some funny moments with Cosma when he has his interactions with Darkness and Megumin. But overall, pretty interesting volume. It's just a Megumin focused one, and they also meet a new Demon Lord General, and it's somebody we've seen before that they met at the hot springs. But without the way, let's get into Konosuba Light Novel 9 because it's a pretty interesting light novel. Like I said, Megumin's the main focus, as you can tell on the volume. But let's get into it because it's a very interesting light novel though. But yeah, if you want these to come out faster, y'all gotta like the video, like for real. If y'all want this to come out faster, because yes, I know the last time I posted was in July of these and I gave up because that last video didn't do that well. But if y'all deadass want this to be a series and for me to talk about these faster, y'all gotta support this shit. So if y'all really want this to be a thing, like the video. Can we get 50 likes? Can we get 100 likes? Something, just like the video and I'll put out more, and I'll put out the next one super fast. I'll even try and put out 3 of them this month. If y'all really want this series, just let me know, because I'll really talk about these Konosuba volumes because I really mess with them heavily. But y'all gotta support the videos though. So the volume starts off in the prologue, and in the prologue it's literally Megumin and Cosma just doing their daily explosion thing, and then they're writing and all that, and then Cosma asks her like, yo, why do you like explosion magic so much? And like, what were you like in your village before? And she tells him, that's a secret. I don't need to tell you right now. So it's just hinting that maybe we might learn later in this volume, like why she wants to learn explosion magic. And also, after that, we get into the chapter, and it picks up basically like where it left off at the end of Light Novel 8, where you had Megumin, you know, hinting that she wanted to spend time with Cosma. So at dinner, Cosma's with Aqua and Darkness, and like they're chatting away, and like Cosma's trying to get them to not want to party because this is the first time they've been together in a little while, because Darkness doesn't have to do governor type of stuff or whatever. But yeah, he's trying to get them away because he wants to get his alone time with Megumin, because he wants to know like, yo, what is she trying to do? She wants to come to my bedroom. But sadly, what happens is like Megumin comes, and then they're gonna have a party all that night, and then the next day Megumin has a game night in her room, and then like stuff doesn't fall into pieces, so it doesn't fall where it needs to go. So Cosmo's disappointed that way because he really wanted to spend that time. So that happens, and then the next day, like Aqua wants to build like basically like a chicken coop for her little chicken that she calls a dragon or whatever. Darkness sees that Cosma and Megumin are flirting with each other, so then she tries to like pick on them, like, why are you flirting? And that gets into like this big old argument between those two. Eventually Aqua and Megumin, they go outside, and while Darkness and Cosma are inside, they're still arguing and all that, and eventually Cosma picks up some wire, and then Darkness is staring at the wire, and she's like, oh, you know, I'm a connoisseur of being bind up, or, you know, being tied up. And she keeps like trying to pressure Cosma to use bind on her that she can get tied up, and eventually Cosma does it. And that's when Darkness is, you know how Darkness is, she's on the ground losing her mind, having the time of her life. And that's when Cosma senses, like with his sense fold, that literally Megumin and Aqua are about to come into the house. So he has to hurry up. He grabs her, and they hide in the closet. And while they're in the closet, they listen to what the other two are doing because they're waiting for them to leave. And like Cosma's trying to figure out how they can get out of the situation. That's when Darkness gets to biting him. And like the reason why she's biting him is, 1, she's embarrassed, and 2, she has to pee and she can't hold it anymore. So as that's happening, Cosma's like, yo, you gotta be quiet. You can't like make no noise or they're gonna catch us and they're gonna think something crazy. So Cosma grabs a handkerchief, puts it in her mouth because she needs to really bite on something. Eventually, she's making too much noise, so he takes the handkerchief off. And that's when Darkness says, quote unquote, would it be weird if I actually started to enjoy being tied up while not trying to wet myself? Yeah, that happens. And she says that, and Cosmo's just like, oh my gosh. Eventually, the two girls outside, they leave again, and that's when Cosmo and them, they get out. They get in a little bit of argument, and eventually Darkness has to go to the bathroom, but she can't open the door, so Cosmo has to open the door. And then we get to a debacle where she can't even pull down her underwear, so Cosmo has to pull down her underwear a little bit for her. And then we get to like she can't even grab toilet paper because she's tied up. And then that's when Aqua and Megumin, they show up, and they're like, yo, what is happening? And they look disgusted, but then once Cosmo explains what actually happens, they're just like, okay. And then Megumin gives them both these charms that she's been making. And the funniest thing about it is what Aqua says after everything, like after like they get done with the story, she says, by the way, did you make it in time, Darkness? And then Cosmo's like, yeah, I was also wondering that too, because like all the stuff that was happening. So it was hilarious. So later that night, Cosmo ends up buying some expensive like wires or whatever to use bind, because Darkness literally wanted it. Like she wanted to be tied up, and she's just in her room having the time of her life again. And then later what happens is Megumin shows up to Cosmo's room finally, and she's holding her cat. And like she's in there and she's like, Cosmo, I have something I've been wanting to tell you for so long. And Cosmo's in suspense, wondering like, oh, what's gonna happen? So you know how Cosmo is. He's like, oh, is she finally gonna tell me that she loves me or something like that? And what she ends up, basically what she's saying is her cat is not actually a cat, and is actually like a dark god and stuff like that. And Cosmo, he's looking like, oh, I been knew this. Your cat is not normal. He's like, it flies, it spits fire. And Megumin's not believing him when he says that. And he's like, you literally came to this room because you wanted to admit your feelings, and like you're literally chickening out of this. And eventually they get in a little argument, and she leaves. And like Cosmo kind of blew it, because that's what Cosmo does all the time, though. So the next thing that happened is something that is hilarious. So the next day, they're all talking to Cosmo how they want to see him be in action and use his full power, blah blah, all of that. And what happens is, this is where Aqua gets a toot in her own horn, and she's like, oh, if I max out my skills and like buff myself, I would be better than you and all this. And like they get in an argument, and then this is what happens is like her and Cosmo, like they're ready to go, like they're raring to go, like they want to be ready to just like do something, and for some reason Darkness is getting hella excited. So later that day or the next day, they go to the guild and they look for quests, and they end up stumbling upon like goblins. So they go about to do goblins to be like test and see who can win between like Darkness and Aqua versus goblins, and like, and then Cosmo and then Megumin eventually comes. But what happens is, so Darkness and Aqua, like they buff each other, and they use, and Aqua especially uses her stats. She goes to like run after these goblins that she can take them out. But Cosmo, he ends up using his sniper ability, and he takes out the goblins. Like every time they try to go after goblins, he takes them out. So like he has an 8-0 lead on them. It's hilarious because they get so mad, and they try to chase after him, and he freezes like the ground with ice, and they end up slipping and busting they shit. And then while that's happening, the goblins end up surrounding him as Megumin catches up to them. And there's this beginner's bane, which is a wolf. And like this is reference to, I think, to like the first light novel or second one. I don't remember exactly which one it is, but it's reference to that because that's like one of the first like creatures they tried to like take down on their first adventure, and like they lost. But now it's different, and Megumin hits it with an explosion and wipes them off the face of the earth. And they actually got the revenge, so like they're all happy about that though. So that was like a cool little moment. So Darkness is reading the newspaper, and in one of the articles it's talking about how a new Demon Lord General is attacking this fortress that's on the front lines. And then when she says the name of the general, they say they're calling her the Dark God. That's when Megumin has some type of weird reaction, and she's kind of shocked. So later that night, Megumin shows up to Cosmo's room again, and this time she's trying to persuade Cosmo to go with her to basically take down the general of the Demon Lord army, because she really wants to take her down. And like she said, she has some connection with the cat, but Cosmo's not having it. She even says that if you go with me, I'll actually come in your room and spend the night with you and do it all. And Cosmo's really not having that at all, because he's like, dog, I'm not falling for your tricks. You're basically gonna lie to me, and you're gonna chicken out again when the time comes. So Cosmo's not feeling it. So the next day in the morning, we see that Darkness is even trying to persuade him, and he's still not having it. And then he even is like, Aqua, do you even want to go do this? And Aqua's like, yeah, since it's somebody trying to be a fake god and a fake deity, yeah, I have to go take them down. So it's basically 3 against 1. He's still not trying to do it, still arguing with them. And then while that's happening, they get a knock on the door, and that's when Yu shows up, and she's holding Megumin's cat. And then Megumin's like, oh, look at this article, read this. At first she's like reading like the Daily Funnies or something, and she's like, no, not that, this article. So then she reads the article, she's like, whoa, she's like, hey, isn't Wabash the one that was sealed up in our village? Once they hear that, they're like, oh yeah. And like the way Megumin reacts, because Megumin was trying to shut up Yu from saying that. And that's when Cosmo has Darkness go get the lie detector. They get the lie detector, and they ask her about everything about Wabash. And that's when we get some of the funniest things. We basically find out that the Crimson Magic Village, they basically unsealed her, then they resealed her in the village to basically be a tourist attraction, because you know how crazy they are, because you learn that in the movie, like how they do some of the most out-of-pocket stuff for no damn reason. So yeah, that happens, and then as it's going on, they're gonna ask her like how she got unsealed, and at first she lies, and then she tells like the truth, quote unquote the truth, because she says her sister is the reason why the seal broke. And that was partially the truth, because that was the second time the seal got broke, but it was not really true, because the real truth was that when Megumin was a little kid, she's the one that actually broke the seal, and she got attacked by a monster, and that's when a mysterious lady saved her with explosion, and that's the reason why she kind of got influenced on wanting to use explosion magic. This is when she pleads to Cosmo, asking can he please come with her, and Cosmo finally gives in and goes with her. So he's like, yeah, he gives up and he's like, yeah, I'll go with you. So as they're getting ready to like get equipment and items they need to get ready, Cosmo's working on some type of new weapon, and it turns out to be dynamite, and he uses it, and it makes an explosion, and that's when Aqua and Darkness are losing their mind, like, wow, I can use explosion too. And then of course Megumin, being upset, she throws the dynamite. She's like, you do not need this. She's like, you do not need this, never work on this again. I'm the only one that should be using explosion, because she's feeling a certain type of way because she's seen that a magical item can explode something like the way she does. But funny thing is, Cosmo uses one of his ability, and he lights the dynamite on fire, and it explodes, and it's hilarious because she gets mad, and he doesn't talk to her to like the next day because she doesn't talk to him. So we get to the next day, they meet up with Yu, and we can tell that Yu has like actually been super excited for this trip because she's done all this extra type of stuff. And then they teleport to the capital, and they're like right outside the capital by the gate. Cosmo goes to talk to the guards, and the guards are making fun of him because they're like, aren't you that guy that died that one time when you thought you were full of yourself in the capital? Yeah, they're making fun of him, and they're telling him like how nobody's going to this fortress because everybody that goes there, basically they end up coming back because they lose. And then he gets the map, and they give him like a thing about monsters and all that, and then he goes back to the group, and the group are like, wow, Cosmo, you actually did something. While Cosmo's looking defeated because he actually wanted to get bodyguards because Cosmo always is chickening out and stuff like that. So as that's happening, they're continuing down the road. This is probably the funniest thing of the whole volume because this shit had me rolling. So as they're going down and continue to try and get to the halfway point, because like there's a halfway in between the capital and then like the fort or whatever. So they run into some bandits, and Cosmo and Aqua are losing their mind. They're like, wow, we ran into some bandits. It's like, I didn't think this world had any bandits because all the monsters. So yeah, they're losing their mind. Yu and Megumin are losing their mind because they're like, wow, we just ran into something that's rarer than any type of monster. And they're calling bandits basically monsters because they're super rare in this world, because you don't see bandits, because like if you know the Konosuba world, like how there's monsters like everywhere. So usually there's not bandits. And that's when Darkness gets into her rant about what? You know how Darkness is, how she's always, always thinking with her party parts down below. We'll say that. And this is when she gets to talk about what the bandits are going to do and what they're going to do to her, because once they kidnap her, and then they're going to be like, oh, we need to test out the goods. Yeah, that shit had me rolling. Then we get to like the bandits running away because like they see she's a noble and they think knights are gonna come in. They also get creeped out because of what Darkness is saying. And Darkness, wild ass, gets to running after them, and she runs after them for so long that they basically have to camp outside, and that kind of sucks. So as they're camping outside, Cosmo lets the girls go to sleep, mainly because he has the sense foe, and he can also see at night. So like he has that. So as it's happening, he starts to sense something, and like he's thinking it's undead, mainly because Aqua, and she attracts the undead all the time. So like he's thinking like, oh, it's just like a skeleton or something, I can take it out easily. But then he realizes he can't tell like where this monster is at, because he's like, yeah, where's this shit at? And then what happens is he realizes it's a undead dragon. It's a zombie dragon. And as that's happening, he's trying to wake up. Everybody's trying to wake up Aqua because he wakes up everybody real fast. And then Darkness has to go there to shield because, like, she's the tank. And, like, Aqua's dumbass is like, you don't need me. She's like, oh, my chicken could take out that zombie. All this other type of stuff. And eventually what happens is Darkness gets hit and knocked out. And then Aqua dumbass finally wakes up. And she has to use, I forgot exactly what it is. She uses the spell and it kills the zombie dragon. But at that same moment, a whole bunch of monsters are swarming them because, undead are coming after because of Aqua, and they have to basically run. She busts herself that she can pick up Darkness, even though she doesn't want to, while Cosmo basically grabs the bags, and he holds Yu and Megumin's hands and like runs basically. And they finally get to the end, but like it's super late at night. And when they get to the end, Aqua's talking about, oh yeah, in this area, a lot of hot springs are mixed baths. And Cosmo's like, oh, I guess I gotta join y'all. And that's when they get some argument. And then at this point, this is where Darkness and Megumin, they try to tease him, and they're saying like, yeah, we wouldn't mind joining you, Cosmo, and all this. So Cosmo's in his head, he's trying to psych himself up because, like, Cosmo chickens out too. And then eventually he goes into the bath, and that's when he hears some humming. And then he's like, oh, it must be a girl here. And then to his surprise, it's actually that redhead woman that he met in the hot spring place, that one, and it had like the Axis Church capital over that. Yeah, that's the one. He met her there, and they're talking, and she's like, oh, do you remember me? And he's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I remember you. I remember I was staring at your chest so much that it made you cry. And they get into a little conversation about stuff, and she even tells him about like how she's missing her partner. She's been searching her partner, I should say, and the partner is technically the cat. And she's even talking about how like she left her at the Crimson Magic Village because she was out of control, but when she went back she couldn't find her. And then that's when Cosmo's like, oh yeah, my friend has a cat that's just like that. And she asks questions about it. And then she's like, I don't think that's my partner at all. Then eventually she leaves. And then the next day, Cosmo is bragging to Darkness and Megumin about like, oh yeah, the encounter I had, I was bathing with a older woman. So it was kind of funny. So when they get to the fortress, they're giving out their identification cards and all that. And like they take everybody's, they give it back. But the one they don't give back is Cosmo's, because Cosmo's a weak adventurer. They're telling him like, yeah, you shouldn't be here. You're going to die. And until Darkness has to step in and be like, yeah, he's with me. I'm part of the Destiny family and all that. And then they do that. Once inside the castle, they meet the dude with the enhanced sword. I forgot his name. What's his name? Like Mitsuragi, whatever. He don't matter. You know the dude that Aqua always forgets his name too. But yeah, they meet him. And then like he shows them outside what's been happening. You see like part of the wall is about to fall off because like it's been getting hit with explosion every single day. And that's when Cosmo and Aqua, they go meet up with everybody and they tell them what's been happening. And that's when they get hit with an explosion. And also, like, at that time, Megumin's talking about, oh, she's my rival since she uses explosion magic. And then her and Yu getting a little banter, and that's when they get hit with the explosion, I should say. And then they try to run outside to see what happens, but the knights tell them this is literally what she's been doing. She's been appearing and hitting them with an explosion, then teleporting away. So that's been happening. So Cosmo comes up with a plan of him going to the forest with everybody, and they're going to try and, like, sneak up on the Demon Lord General. So, like, eventually they get there, and Cosmo tells Megumin to start chanting her explosion, but then as they get there, the lady, she starts to appear, and he realizes that's the girl from the hot spring, and then she recognizes him, and then also Yu recognizes her, and like they have a little chat and all that and then Aqua and Wabash, they get into like some little argument and all that because Aqua's talking about a fake deity or a minor god and all this other shit. It's funny. And then Aqua like unleashes like, you know, her one ability that floods and shit, and that's when Wabash like teleports away, and they all are there, and they go back to the castle, and then they kind of come up with a different plan. They're trying to realize like what can they do because they're kind of at a stalemate at this point because I guess a war of nutrition. And that's when they make Aqua build the wall. And if you know Aqua, she's really good at building walls, especially from season 1. That was one thing she was really good at, was like building walls, because she was always in her construction type of bag. So she builds that wall, and everybody's seeing like, oh, it's really good. And then they see that they get hit with an explosion, then she starts like building the wall super fast. And then eventually they call her the repair captain because like she's rebuilding this wall so fast and is stronger and better than the wall actually looked. Eventually, Wabash comes to them because he's like, yo, what is happening with the wall? This wall was just destroyed. They get in a little argument about it. So as Aqua and Wabash are arguing, that's when she stares and sees, because Megumin comes and Yu are there, and they see the cat, and she stares at the cat, and that's when we find out that the cat is the partner that she's been looking for, and she tries to get the partner and all that, and Cosmo comes with the idea. He's like, I'll give you the cat, but you gotta leave us alone, but you also gotta swear your name. That's when everybody looks at him all crazy and shit. So that's when Cosmo comes up with another brilliant idea of, let's give them a taste of what they've been giving us. So Cosmo grabs him, Yu and Megumin, and they go to the forest, and they literally hit the monsters camp with explosion, and they continue to do that daily until Wabash finally shows up. And when she shows up, Cosmo's still trying to talk to her to like handle things peacefully because he doesn't want to go against her because he actually really likes her. And that's when he mentions like, yo, we have bathed together twice, and you even said we had some connection. And that's when Yu and Megumin looking at him like, what? Like, what did you just say? And it's kind of, that should have you rolling. But at that moment, that's when Megumin asks her, do you remember me? And she says no, and that's when Megumin freezes. And then even Yu asks her about, like, do you remember me? And she talks about, yeah, you're the person that I invited to be in the carriage with. And Megumin's just frozen there. And as that's happening, Wabash is chanting explosion, and that's when Cosmo tells Yu to hurry up and teleport them. And as that's happening, that's when Cosmo grabs dynamite out of his pocket. He throws it in the air at her. She kind of freezes because she doesn't know what it is. And then they teleport away. And once they land in the castle, everybody's wondering what all happened because they can tell something's wrong. And that's when Wabash, you see her running to the castle, but she's damaged because you can tell she got by that explosion, and you can tell she did. So all the adventurers, they're literally looking, they're like, oh, she looks weaker now, and they're all running outside to go against her. And as that's happening, Yu and Cosmo, they give Megumin a pep talk because at that moment she really was like feeling down because Wabash didn't remember her. So eventually they give her the pep talk. They go outside. Cosmo's having another conversation with her, and he's even trying to like basically plead to her like, yo, I don't really want to, can we just handle this peacefully? And like, why are you also in this Demon Lord like, why are you one of the generals there? And she's like, you have to take me out for you to find out and all that, or you can ask him yourself and all that. So as that's happening, Megumin's saying basically she does remember me. She's like, you do remember me, and you're the one that saved me such and such when. And then eventually, in one of the most badass moments ever, she's like, I'm one of the best people at using explosion magic, and I've gotten so good I don't even have to cast a spell. And she hits Wabash with explosion. She says thank you, and as that's happening, Wabash smiles too, so you can tell that she probably did more and like remember her. And at that moment, after they take her out, the rest of the Demon Lord army, they're all like, you know, they're basically going to scatter away because they're defeated, basically, because their general got taken out. So at that point, the rest of the group, they basically leave the fortress. They go to the hot spring thing, and like they're all kind of just, it's basically Cosmo's left in thought, and he's kind of just feeling, he's trying to just thinking about like what actually happened and all that. And that's when he gets a knock on his door. Megumin comes in, and then she lays on this man's bed, hides under the cover, and she says, can I stay here tonight? And Cosmo's like, no, I'm not falling for your little tricks and all that. And that's when she starts to hug him, and she's hugging him tighter. And as that's happening, that's when Cosmo, of course, is feeling some type of way, because she even says, I love you. And Cosmo's feeling some type of way because he's up in his head like what am I gonna do? And he's like, I remember like playing video games and watching anime and all this and reading books, and like it would always be the protagonist and they would not smash anybody. And he was like, and I was always thinking that moment I would most definitely. So he's like, he's like, oh, I guess I can relate to them now, and I understand how they felt in that moment. So as that's happening, he's thinking about kissing her, and that's when you hear Aqua in the hallway like yelling like where Megumin's at and all that. And just as Cosmo's about to say something to them, that's when Megumin starts hugging him tighter because she doesn't want to leave. And what we find out is basically the real reason why she came here is because she's blaming herself for Wabash's death, because she did save her as a little kid, so she's feeling some type of ungrateful. And that's when Cosmo gets into a little story about like how he was with his parents and how he was a NEET and how he basically stayed in the house all the time even though his parents were paying this super expensive private school bill and he really wasn't going to school and all that. Megumin laughs at that and says like, oh, I feel bad for your parents. Eventually Cosmo tells her that next time if you want to come here just for me and to hang out, I always will be here for you if you want it just for me, even if you're feeling sad and all that. So she eventually leaves. Cosmo thinks about like, damn, I guess I kind of did blow it there when I could have like, you know, could have done more. Next morning, Megumin's just thinking about what all happened that night, and then we get to like the very end, which is the second epilogue, which Cosmo gets a letter in the mail, and it happens to be from Iris, and she asks him, can you be my bodyguard for me when I go to this neighboring country? And that's where the volume ends. Just know, volume 10 is basically going to be about all of them basically guarding Iris as they go to a new country. And just know, the new country is very interesting. It's a gambling country, so I'll just say this, it kind of gets lit at a few times in the next volume, so we're gonna talk about that. But yeah, the next time we talk about a volume will be volume 10, and like I said, it'll be Iris in it, so that should be hopefully be coming soon. If you enjoyed the video, why not like? If you didn't, you could dislike, subscribe if you really enjoyed. But yes, I'm finally back with doing these. I know I took a long break, but if y'all support, I'll be there faster though. But thank you for watching. See you next video though. Bye.